Have you ever wondered what really happens when America's most powerful law enforcement agencies move in together, DEA and ICE, on a single mission? This month, a massive multi-state operation across Kentucky, Tennessee, and West Virginia has exposed one of the biggest cartel networks in recent years. Agents seized over 100 guns, thousands of counterfeit pills, and arrested dozens of individuals connected to the Sinaloa cartel. But behind these headlines lies a much deeper question. How will this operation ripple through the U.S. immigration system? Could it shape USCIS policies, tighten visa processing, or even affect asylum reviews in late 2025? In today's video, we'll break down the story beyond the surface, how drug enforcement, immigration policy, and federal coordination intertwine in ways that few people truly understand. We'll explore what this operation reveals about border control, internal enforcement, and the federal government's growing cooperation between agencies. Stay with me to the end, because we'll also unpack how the USCIS could respond to this event and what it may mean for immigrants, sponsors, and families navigating the system. Before we dive in, make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you never miss an update on U.S. immigration, law enforcement, and policy changes that directly impact you. Let's begin. In early October 2025, the U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration, working in coordination with the Department of Homeland Security's Immigration and Customs Enforcement Division, carried out what officials describe as a multi-state criminal interdiction sweep. The operation spanned rural counties and small towns across Kentucky, Tennessee, and West Virginia regions that in recent years have become unexpected hubs for cartel-driven narcotics distribution. While the seizures themselves are impressive, 3 tons of drugs according to early local reports, 133 guns, and several dozen arrests, the broader significance lies in how agencies like DEA and ICE share intelligence and how such cooperation reverberates inside the immigration system managed by USCIS. Federal officials stated that the sweep focused primarily on disrupting trafficking lines connected to the Sinaloa cartel. This cartel, one of the most powerful criminal organizations in the world, has long used rural distribution networks to push fentanyl, methamphetamine, and counterfeit pills into U.S. communities. Kentucky and Tennessee, with their complex web of highways and logistics routes, offer perfect channels for mid-level distributors who often operate far from the border. ICE's Homeland Security Investigations Branch joined the effort not only to assist in arrests but to identify individuals residing or working in the U.S. under fraudulent documentation. In the process, several leads reportedly pointed toward overstayed visas, fake asylum claims, and identity theft rings that indirectly supported the cartel's logistics. The significance of ICE's involvement cannot be overstated. Typically, ICE operations focus either on border enforcement or internal removals, while DEA focuses exclusively on narcotics. Here, however, the agencies formed a task force-style operation that blurred those lines, combining criminal and immigration intelligence. This model echoes the integrated enforcement philosophy first developed in the early 2000s after 9/11, where national security, immigration control, and organized crime suppression began to overlap strategically. It reflects an ongoing shift in U.S. policy where immigration is not viewed in isolation but as part of a broader public safety framework. As news of the raids spread, the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services found itself once again at the center of a public conversation. Although USCIS does not carry out arrests or removals, its adjudication of immigration benefits often responds indirectly to enforcement trends. Whenever large-scale ICE or DEA operations reveal immigration fraud or document misuse, USCIS typically reassesses its internal screening procedures. That can mean tougher background checks, expanded biometrics requirements, and closer coordination with the Department of Justice when criminal histories surface. By mid-October, immigration attorneys across the southern and midwestern United States began reporting delays in certain visa categories. Applicants in family-based petitions and employment authorization renewals saw extended review timelines. While no official memo has confirmed a policy change, several legal observers noted that after the DEA-ICE operation, adjudicators became more cautious in cases involving regions flagged for criminal investigations. Such procedural slowdowns often happen quietly, framed as case-by-case vetting improvements, yet their impact on applicants can be significant. To understand the deeper relationship between enforcement and immigration policy, it helps to revisit how agencies interact. The DEA operates under the Department of Justice, ICE under the Department of Homeland Security, and USCIS is also part of DHS but functions as a service-oriented agency, not a policing one. When the DEA or ICE uncovers evidence of identity fraud or undocumented employment within a criminal case, that information can flow through DHS databases accessible to USCIS officers. In other words, a single criminal probe can indirectly reshape how thousands of routine immigration applications are evaluated. Officials from the Louisville Field Division emphasized that the cartel's reach extended well beyond traditional drug smuggling. In several of the arrests, investigators found evidence of individuals using falsified social security numbers and stolen identities to obtain driver's licenses or employment. This matters to USCIS because such records sometimes appear in adjustment of status applications. If a person previously worked under a false identity, even unknowingly, the agency may question eligibility for permanent residency. Thus, the DEA-ICE collaboration not only dismantled an active drug network but also illuminated vulnerabilities within the documentation and verification process that USCIS oversees. Public reaction to the operation has been mixed. On one hand, local communities applauded the removal of dangerous criminal networks. On the other, advocacy groups expressed concern that linking immigration systems too closely with law enforcement crackdowns could lead to overreach or chilling effects among lawful immigrants fearful of scrutiny. This debate reflects a broader national tension: how to balance security and due process in a climate where border issues dominate political discourse. The Biden administration, entering its fifth year, has faced criticism from both sides, accused by some of being too lenient on border enforcement and by others of allowing internal enforcement operations to echo the aggressive tone of previous administrations. Within this context, the October 2025 DEA-ICE operation landed like a thunderclap. It showcased the government's ability to coordinate large-scale raids while publicly reaffirming a commitment to lawful migration and national safety. Yet it also reignited questions about how much influence enforcement should have on USCIS's mission, which is primarily service-driven and humanitarian. Behind closed doors, USCIS leadership reportedly held interagency briefings to analyze data emerging from the operation. Early indicators suggest an internal review of vetting systems for employment-based visas, especially for industries vulnerable to illicit labor exploitation such as logistics, agriculture, and manufacturing sectors where cartel affiliates often hide in plain sight. There's speculation that by early 2026, USCIS could introduce new employer verification protocols similar to an expanded E-Verify system, designed to flag inconsistencies before applications reach final adjudication. For immigrants currently in the system, the message is subtle but clear: transparency and documentation accuracy matter more than ever. Even if a person has no connection to criminal activity, incomplete or inconsistent paperwork may now draw additional scrutiny. Immigration lawyers recommend double-checking every employment record, tax filing, and Form I-94 entry record to ensure that the smallest clerical errors do not trigger requests for evidence or delays. Meanwhile, lawmakers in Washington have seized the operation's momentum to argue for renewed funding for interagency task forces. A bipartisan Senate committee is drafting a proposal to make joint DEA-ICE-USCIS intelligence centers permanent, enabling faster data sharing and fraud detection. Critics warn this could blur the lines between enforcement and service provision, but supporters say the opioid and fentanyl crises demand precisely such cooperation. The October 2025 operation is being cited as proof that collaboration yields tangible results. On the ground, the communities affected by the raids are experiencing a mix of relief and anxiety. Residents in parts of eastern Kentucky and western Tennessee describe the surreal sight of convoys of federal vehicles sweeping through quiet towns at dawn. For many, it reinforced the perception that drug networks have infiltrated places once thought immune to cartel influence. For immigrants living legally in those regions, however, the sudden federal presence sparked nervous questions about whether routine check-ins, DACA renewals, or pending petitions might be delayed or misunderstood. Media coverage has also evolved. Early reports sensationalized the idea of tons of drugs seized, but official DEA releases clarified the quantities were smaller, though still significant. This discrepancy highlights the challenge of information accuracy in the social media age. It also underscores why responsible reporting both by journalists and by YouTube creators like you is vital. Audiences crave truth over hype, and clarity builds trust. That's exactly why titles like this one focus on verified information rather than exaggerated claims. As weeks passed, the Department of Justice released additional details showing that the operation not only dismantled active trafficking lines but also recovered digital evidence, phones, ledgers, and encrypted communications that could trace financial flows back to Mexico. ICE analysts working with Homeland Security investigations are using that data to identify potential money laundering channels linked to remittances and fake business registrations. This financial angle matters for USCIS as well, because shell companies involved in laundering sometimes sponsor fraudulent employment petitions. The crackdown thus feeds directly into long-term anti-fraud reforms within the immigration system. One of the most discussed outcomes is whether USCIS will modify background check protocols for certain high-risk regions or industries. Already, internal memos suggest that immigration officers may receive new guidance emphasizing cross-reference with criminal databases before approving employment authorization documents. This additional layer could slightly extend processing times but may enhance national security screening overall. From a policy perspective, the October 2025 raids represent a shift toward convergence enforcement, a strategy where distinct agencies act under a unified intelligence framework. The benefits are clear: faster response, broader reach, and reduced duplication. But challenges remain, especially in maintaining the delicate boundary between criminal justice and immigration benefits. If enforcement dominates too heavily, the humanitarian aspect of immigration, family reunification, asylum protection, and refugee resettlement risks being overshadowed. USCIS leadership has repeatedly stressed that while coordination is essential, the agency's mandate remains service-oriented. Looking forward, analysts expect that by late 2025 and into 2026, Congress will review funding models for USCIS to strengthen fraud detection units. This move, though technical, could affect fee structures and processing times for applicants. More robust vetting tools may lead to slightly higher filing fees but could also reduce backlogs caused by manual security checks. For the average applicant, that means a trade-off between cost and speed. On the societal level, the operation reignited conversations about the root causes driving both illegal trafficking and irregular migration. Economic instability in parts of Latin America continues to push people northward, creating opportunities for cartels to exploit smuggling routes. The DEA and ICE collaboration in the U.S. addresses the supply side of narcotics but also reveals how demand and migration pressures intersect. Experts argue that genuine immigration reform must accompany enforcement. Otherwise, the cycle simply regenerates under new names and faces. Throughout October, public forums, academic panels, and local news outlets debated whether enforcement success stories like this should influence future USCIS rulemaking. Some advocated that every major criminal case linked to undocumented labor should trigger automatic policy review within USCIS. Others countered that such linkage could unfairly stigmatize immigrant communities, most of whom have no connection to criminal enterprises. The tension between fairness and vigilance continues to shape how immigration is discussed in America's heartland. From a communications standpoint, USCIS has been cautious, issuing only brief statements reaffirming its commitment to secure and efficient adjudication of lawful immigration benefits. However, inside the agency, training sessions reportedly emphasize the lessons learned from the DEA and ICE collaboration, particularly the importance of document authenticity, biometric integrity, and interagency communication. These internal reforms may not make headlines, but they define the next phase of modernization for America's immigration system. By the end of October 2025, observers noted a shift in public sentiment. The operation's immediate drama faded, replaced by quieter recognition that immigration enforcement and policy are no longer isolated conversations, they're intertwined threads of the same national tapestry. The average citizen now understands that when DEA agents seize drugs in Kentucky, or ICE arrests a trafficker in Tennessee, those actions echo all the way to the USCIS officer processing an application in California. It's a networked system where each node influences the others. As this story continues, it serves as a reminder that the fight against cartels isn't just about narcotics, it's about safeguarding institutions that define lawful movement, honest documentation, and trust between government and people. For millions navigating the immigration process, awareness is power. Knowing how these agencies connect can mean the difference between delay and approval, between confusion and clarity. So as you follow this developing story, remember that enforcement and immigration are not opposing forces, they're complementary parts of the same goal: protecting communities while preserving America's promise of opportunity. If you found this analysis helpful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you can stay updated on every major development shaping U.S. immigration and federal policy in 2025. Your engagement helps us keep producing fact-checked, reliable content that empowers viewers to understand the real story behind the headlines.